I'm Alfred Lambremont Webre, and we have the distinct pleasure today to be with, all the way from New Zealand, David Gregg, who is an amateur astronomer of some 30 years standing, who is a very active member in our Facebook group, which is called 2013 Dual Sun Mystery. And Dave has been following very assiduously, using the rigor of astronomical science, all of the various postings as to the evidence for and against the possible presence of, call it Planet X, call it Nibiru. There are many different other names. Some say it may be a dual sun that our sun has, a brown dwarf that some posit is now nearing. And the occasion of our being together is that researcher Marshall Masters has posted a video dated July 28, 2013, in which he takes, reports images, recent images, and in fact he reports it as the first image of the brown dwarf system, taken from a plane by a member of his team. And so we can consider this, Dave is here to consider this a formal video response to Marshall Masters' video. And you can go to ExopoliticsTV and you will see a lengthy article on Marshall Masters' video of July 28, 2013. There'll be a lengthy article around this video, and those links will be posted in the video description to this video. David, with that lengthy introduction, first of all, I want to thank you for your countless hours of service and of monitoring this very important issue, and also of being willing to come on and to challenge a fairly hefty team behind Marshall Masters, who now claims that he has posted the first actual photograph of the brown dwarf system. So it's over to you now.
Okay, thank you, Alfred, and I do appreciate this opportunity to have a look at these images together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen with you, and we're going to take a look at some of the images that are posted in Marshall Masters' video, and we're going to take a closer look at those and analyze them using astronomy tools such as Starry Night Pro software. Now, first of all, I'm going to take a quick look at the section in the video. The particular part of the video that we're talking about is around about 40 minutes into his video, and it runs for about 10 minutes. Now, I'm not going to play all of that because there are sections that are extraneous, but we will look at some of that and look at those images from that video. So from here, I'm going to start my screen sharing so that I can show you that video and look at the images together. So just let me know if there are any problems. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, hopefully you should be seeing my screen now.
No. Oh, yes. There it is. Yes.
Okay, so we're looking at the Planet X System Observations and Orbital Analysis video by Marshall Masters, and we're at just on 39 minutes into the video. So I'll just start playing some of this, and hopefully it won't be too long.
With this in mind, let's turn our attention to the images of Jorge Arena, our very talented stringer at the Two Suns in the Sky research team on the Planet X Town Hall. And what I want to do with you, the viewer out there, is that we're going to do this camera sensor illumination analysis shoulder to shoulder. On May 27, 2013, Jorge was flying from Ontario to Lima, Peru on business. And fortunately for us, we have Jorge queued up and online. And so, Jorge, please introduce yourself to the audience and let them know a little bit about what brought you to Planet X.
Hello, Marshall. Yes, my name is George Urena. I am the president of Utco Corporation, a company based in Ontario, Canada, manufacturing products from Peru. I get to travel a lot, and well, definitely I came to the topic of Planet X because of a vision that I had a few years back. Doing some research on the website, I found your website.
Well, Jorge, I'm really glad that you did. And now I'd like to get into some of the details on your business flight from Ontario to Lima, Peru.
Well, Marshall, due to my business, I get to travel quite a bit, almost everywhere, and particularly to Lima, Peru, because that's where we get all our products for distribution worldwide. And in this particular case, I decided to take a special flight, not the usual way I normally do it, which is a direct flight to Peru from Toronto. This time I've done it through El Salvador via TACA Airlines. The flight departed at around 10:30 on May 27th, arriving at El Salvador around 3 o'clock. We were flying at about 37,000 feet altitude, and that's when I basically take all these pictures. I should mention...
Okay, I'll just stop the video there for a moment, Alfred.
Sure.
So we've heard Jorge's description. He'd mentioned that he flew from Toronto down to Lima, Peru, and he was taking these images at an altitude of about 37,000 feet, which works out to 11.2 kilometres altitude. We're going to come back to that later in the video. We saw a series of his images, and we're going to take a closer look at those. But first of all, let's just hear a little bit more of the video and Marshall Masters' commentary.
Yeah, sorry, could you state, you said 37,000 feet. How many kilometers, what was that? I missed that.
That works out to, I'll just share in here, you should be able to see calculation, 37,000 feet.
Yeah, 112,077.
That's 11,277 metres.
Oh,
yes, if I change that to kilometres, that's 11.
Okay, good. Sorry.
11.2 kilometres.
Okay, good. Okay. Thank you.
So I'll go back to the video. Jorge here is just describing his Nikon camera here. Yeah. And it's a Coolpix AW100, as you can see in the image there.
Sure.
Now he does mention that the time and date stamp on the camera was set to Toronto Eastern Standard Time, he says, but in fact, if we check the local time in Toronto, we see that the daylight saving time started on Sunday the 10th of March 2013 and will end on the 3rd of November 2013. So this means that the time that he took this was actually daylight saving time. Now that is quite important because obviously the clocks go forward 1 hour.
Yeah.
So we'll carry on and...
The pictures taken with my camera have a date stamp of Toronto, Eastern Standard Time.
Jorge, during your trip, I could see that you were doing a lot of experimenting with your Nikon camera. And it was good to see that. A lot of people just won't take the time to test their equipment that way. And in the process, you found what I believe to be an incredibly compelling image. It was a 1-second exposure taken south of the equator at an altitude of 37,000 feet. And that's quite remarkable. Jorge, what is it that you learned with this particular camera experiment?
The reason why the plane inside, the lights of the plane were off. So that created a perfect scenario for the camera to pick up on the light outside. I have difficulty trying to set the camera, put the camera to the right settings in order to take the pictures. But honestly, because there were no lights inside, I was able to capture the light outside. And that's the reason why I was successful in getting this picture.
Well, Jorge, I have to say, hats off to you for a really, really stellar 1-second exposure image. With that in mind, now I'm going to explain to you what those 3 objects are that you captured. while we see 4 possible objects, the faint one in the lower right is not a real object. However, the other 3 are. And when I used Starry Night Professional and the raw file data from your camera, I found that you actually photographed a rare conjunction of 3 planets: Mercury, Jupiter, and Venus. Jorge, given that you did not image Planet X in this particular photo, let me ask you, was the effort worth it?
I think it was really worth it.
Okay, I'll just stop the video there again and comment on what we've just seen. In these images, Marshall Masters identifies a conjunction between Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter. I believe that he certainly may have successfully identified that conjunction in the picture, and we will confirm that. And this is quite a key piece of information because in his video he uses the identification of this conjunction to confirm the rest of his findings in the video. Now we're going to scrutinize these images very carefully using Starry Night Pro, and we are going to see that although the conjunction certainly does appear to be a genuine image, the images that follow on from that are in fact not correct, and I will explain to you why that is. That we do carry on with a little bit more of Marshall's commentary on this video at this stage. So if that is okay with you, I'll just play a few more minutes of the video.
Now that's the spirit, Jorge. You know, on our team, our motto is believe nothing, observe everything, and leave no stone unturned. And we did that with your images and found something rather surprising. This image you took below the equator not only shows a rare conjunction of Mercury, Jupiter, and Venus, but one that is consistent with the many stories we found about this conjunction event on popular astronomy websites. In other words, Jorge, this image is irrefutable proof that you took it at that time and at that altitude over the Pacific Ocean. And so it was this image that put us on the path to an amazing discovery in one of the earlier images you captured during this same flight. Before we share that with the viewers, Jorge, I'd like for you to explain to them what you learned about taking pictures through the clouds at high altitude.
Well, this is very interesting, Marshall, because eventually I found that the clouds act as a filter, as a natural filter in order to control reflections.
Thanks for sharing that, Jorge, because you really hit the ball out of the park. Not below the equator, but rather 4 degrees above it, and in an altitude.
Okay, again, I'll just stop this video. This is the key image that we're looking at here. Now, please note the time on the date stamp there. It's 18:29 or 6:29 p.m. And again, we will be coming back to this image and scrutinize it.
Altitude of 37,000 feet. So let's take a close look at where Starry Night Professional places Mercury, Jupiter, and Venus. Keep that conjunction in mind, because in this image we find Jupiter and Venus exactly where Starry Night says they're supposed to be, but no Mercury. Then again, it's not the brightest bulb on the tree, so to speak. But what is that bright dot near the sun? Let's take a closer look at that. And yes, there is something there close to the sun, and it is not where Mercury is supposed to be. So, are we experiencing a technical fluke? Necessary question. With that in mind, I went back and double-checked my settings, and they were fine. And so, yes, we've got Jupiter and Venus pretty well nailed down, but we're still drawing a blank on that mystery spot near the sun. Okay, now it's time to do a camera sensor analysis, CSI, and we'll start with the 2 objects we're certain of, Jupiter and Venus. As we see, there's plenty of natural foreground illumination for both. So, it's 2 thumbs up for Jorge. With this in mind, let's return to our mystery object. In this sensor analysis, we see a clear outline of Mercury, and for the record, no way would I have ever expected to be able to see this in any HD smartphone or cell phone image. It's just too subtle. But what I can say is, thank you Nikon, thank you Nikon, thank you Nikon. This is the difference 16 megapixels and a good lens can make. And it doesn't cost an arm and a leg. And there we go. Mercury just where Starry Night told us it would be. So now, that's 3 thumbs up for Jorge, because we've nailed Mercury as well. But there is still one stone unturned, the mystery object near the sun. So let's go for broke and do a camera sensor illumination analysis. And once again, I must say thank you, Nikon, because I never expected to see anything this close to the sun that could generate anywhere near this amount of foreground illumination. At this point, we know that we have a hot object. But
Okay, I'm going to stop the video here, and we might come back to his further analysis of this object next to the sun later on. But I think that we're going to find that the analysis of his images of the of what he claims is Venus and Jupiter next to the sun, the rest of the video is actually going to fall apart. So we probably won't even need to look at his heat analysis. I mean, we certainly can do that. I've looked into it and I've found that there are problems with his analysis as well. So from here, we're going to look at some snaps of the video, starting with Jorge's introduction and the images that he took. So I'll just go full screen on that. Now, I'm just going to step through these images and give a brief commentary as we go. So this is the aircraft that, or type of aircraft they flew on at 37,000 feet from El Salvador to Lima, Peru. He did say that there was a connecting flight. This, I assume, is when he took off at Toronto Airport, 11 o'clock. Remember that this is daylight saving time. And he took a series of snaps at different times. It's important to check the timestamp down in the lower right-hand corner of the picture as we go. Most of these early ones are just blue sky, nothing much to see, except we can see the horizon, the clouds, so we get an idea of the field of view that we're seeing. Now, this is the first one of some very interesting photos in that, and I hope you can make it out in the screen share, that we see a solar halo around the sun. Can you make that out, Alfred?
Yes.
Okay. Now, this is quite a key piece of information because if we look into solar halos and do some research on them, we find that the halo is always 22 degrees from the sun, from the center of the sun. So this gives us an idea of the angles that we're looking at, the distances between objects and angular separation, and I'm going to come back to that. Also in this photo, you might notice that there are some small lens flares. I can see one here, another one here. And another important point, and we'll see this as I step through the photos, is that we're looking through an aircraft cabin window, which is so we've got 2 layers of, I believe, perspex, and that does affect the picture quality to some degree. There's also another factor which has to do with internal lens reflections, which is quite common, especially to iPhone-type camera phones. And we often see people taking photos of the sun, thinking that they have taken pictures of the second sun or Nibiru Planet X next to the sun, when in fact what they've taken a picture of is an internal lens reflection, which is different to a standard lens flare. You know, normal lens flares will move all around when you tilt the camera. It'll move all around the sun, but these internal lens reflections will actually remain static, the same place relative to the sun when you move the camera around. And for that reason, people often think that they have a genuine image of something next to the sun. Now, there's a very simple way to test that, and I call it the finger test. And there are some very good videos on YouTube that demonstrate how to do this. What you do is you put your finger out between the sun and the camera lens so that you're actually blocking out the sun. Now, when you do this, of course, if the second object disappears, created by the sun.
Yeah, Dave. Sorry, you cut out there. Could you repeat the finger test, please?
Okay, the finger test is an easy way to test whether the object that you are filming is in fact genuine, or whether it is an internal lens reflection. And what you do is you put your finger out between the sun and the camera lens in a direct line, so you're actually blocking out the sun. Now when you do that, if the second object that appears to be next to the sun suddenly disappears, then we know that it is an internal lens reflection generated by the light from the sun. Now the second test that you have to do when doing the finger test is to put your finger between the second object that appears to be next to the sun and the camera lens. And then if you find that that object appears to be superimposed over your finger, then obviously, again, it is an internal lens reflection and not a real object. Right. And too many times people are taking photos of the sun and they're failing to do the simple test.
Right.
As a result, they think that they filmed a second sun, which they haven't. And provide some links to some very good videos that have been done. In fact, one was done by a chap who genuinely thought that he had filmed a second sun, and somebody contacted him and suggested this test. And he refilmed it and said, yes, fair enough, it's been debunked, and here is the video to prove it. So, it's up to him for doing that. Okay, I'm going to carry on with these images. So, again, we're looking through the aircraft cabin window there, which is dual layer. That's quite important. So, again, we've got a slight solar halo in this one. Remember the 22 degrees around the sun. This one was at 17:49, or about 10 minutes to 6. And stepping through, in fact, in this image here, you can almost see where the two layers of the cabin window come into the edge of the window there. And we can see the wing, which gives us some sort of idea of our field of view. Also, as I'm going through these, it is important to remember that we are seeing other little solar flares here, lens flares I should say, like this one here and one up here. These seem to be ignored by Marshall Masters in his analysis. He certainly picks on one in that other key image that we will be looking at, but he seems to ignore all of these other little lens flares. Again, here is another little lens flare. This one's quite a common one that we see throughout these images. And again, we see this 22-degree solar halo. Another little lens flare there. And now we're looking at this is a key image in Marshall Masters' video, and it's one that we will be scrutinizing in Starry Night Pro. And again, it's very important that we consider that we can see this halo. Can you see that in this image, Alfred?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So we can see the 22-degree solar halo, so that's 22 degrees out from the center of the sun. And this is a key factor because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at the images of the conjunction of Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter. Sorry. We will be measuring the angular separation between these planets and the sun, and we will be comparing it to this image. So this image is very important, and this is a critical image in Marshall Masters' video. So we carry on. This is 6:30. And now you can see that the sun is setting. This is 10 to 8. And this image is quite important too because we can actually see a little star here. Can you see that star, Alfred?
Yeah, could you point to it again?
Just here.
Okay.
Okay, there's 3 images with this star. Now it's up here, just below my cursor.
Okay.
And one more, we can see the star here.
Okay.
Okay, now this is the only star that I can see in these 3 images, and I believe the star to be the very bright star Sirius.
Okay.
Now these are the first of the 3 images which appear to be the conjunction of Mercury, Venus and Jupiter. Obviously there was a bit of motion blur in this one,
right,
and also in this one.
Right.
But this is the one, this is the second key image that Marshall Masters uses in his video to authenticate the other images. Now I certainly believe that this is likely, I'm 99% sure that this is in fact the conjunction of Mercury, Venus and Jupiter, and I'll show you why.
Yeah.
Okay. As for the other images, I'm quite sure that they are just internal lens reflections, as I explained. Now, each one of these are screen grabs from Marshall Masters' videos where he's pointing different objects. He's object here is in fact not an object. Sorry, can't talk. That this is not an object, and that the other objects are. Sorry, I just had somebody at the door there.
Okay.
And so we'll be coming back to this, and let me just go to the earlier screen grabs now. I'll just close this and go back to the first images. Just to recap, so we are looking at a Google map. We left from Toronto, Canada, and the images that were taken from the plane were off the coast here, off the coast of Peru.
Right.
Okay. Now, next image, we've already looked at that, was the calculation of the altitude in 37,000 feet, 11.2 kilometres.
Yeah.
And now we're getting down to the real important stuff here, because here is the image taken at 2000 hours or 8 p.m, showing what appears to be the conjunction of Mercury, Venus and Jupiter. Now I've checked this in Starry Night, and I've done an overlay test, which is equivalent to the old-fashioned blink comparator test, where early astronomers using photographic plates would take a series of photos and they would blink between two different images to see if there was any movement of objects in the star field. That is how Pluto was discovered. So here is an image from Starry Night Pro where we can see Jupiter, Venus and Mercury. So we've got Jupiter here, Venus and Mercury. I'm going to flick back to the previous image, and we can see that it is in fact a perfect match. Okay?
Right.
So I certainly believe that this image, I'm quite sure that this is a genuine image of a conjunction of the three planets.
Right.
Now you can see that I've got the time is set to the same as in the photo, so 8 o'clock p.m. Now this little orange light here means that we're looking at daylight saving time. We're set to May 27, 2013. I should note that I've got the altitude here set to 12.2 kilometres. I clicked this on 1 kilometre too many, but in fact that really doesn't make any difference at all to what we're looking at. The other thing that you might notice is that up the top here it says New Mayer Station Field of View. You can ignore that. That was the file that I opened when I started.
Sure.
But the location is set correctly. And so that is a perfect match. And so I'll step to the next image, and this is the other critical image.
Right.
At what time is that? 1829, so 6:29. And this is the image that Marshall claims also shows Venus and Jupiter next to the Sun. And if I zoom up, we can also see this object, which is a mystery object at this stage.
Right.
Remember again that we've got that 22-degree solar halo. Now we're back to Marshall's images again, and as you'll recall, when we looked at his video, he showed us this graphic from Starry Night Professional, which is the that I'm using, and we can see Jupiter and Venus and the Sun. Now notice if I go back to the previous image, do you see the problem here, Alfred?
Tell me.
Okay, if I look at this image and we look at the distance between Jupiter and Venus, the distance between Venus and the Sun, we can see that in the image from Starry Night Professional, the distance between Venus and the Sun is considerably greater than what we see in the photograph.
Right. Now, could you say that that's a matter of perspective?
No, not at all, because I frequently do these sort of overlays. Station webcam where we're looking at, people often post videos claiming to be, and what I make do is layer that image from the New Mayer Station camera over Starry Night Pro, and all of the stars line up. There is a very slight variation when you get out to the edge of the screen, but looking at something this close, no, it should be pretty much identical. And you saw before in my comparison with the conjunction of Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter that it was a perfect match. Okay, so first of all, we have a real problem here because our distances are completely different.
Right.
And again, we see this solar halo, which is 22 degrees from the sun. So that gives us some idea.
Yeah. Now, what's the significance of the 22 degrees solar halo again?
I'll come back to that in the images from Starry Night. When we measure the planets, it's just another tool to confirm to us the distances that we're talking about.
Okay.
But that will become clearer. Now, again, here is the image from the video that shows Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter, and Starry Night, and the Sun. And now I do another a blink comparator test with the image taken by Jorge, where I overlay it over this image. So if we concentrate on these two orbs of light and assume that they are Venus and Jupiter, then we look at where they are compared to the background. They actually line up with the objects in our Starry Night, but then we have a problem with where the Sun is. So I'll blink backwards and forwards.
Yeah.
And you can see the problem there.
Yeah. Right.
Now, I don't believe that these two orbs or spheres of light here are actually Venus and Jupiter.
Right.
I do that they are just internal lens reflections, and that will become clear a little bit further on.
I see.
So again, we're going to do another blink comparison. This is the image from Marshall Masters' video where he points to this dark smudge, or he considers to be an object, and later identifies that as Mercury. We have another problem with this image, because if I do a blink comparison with that as well, and we focus on, again, these two objects, and in particular this one, because this is the one I really used to line up on, then if I blink backwards and forwards, we can see that Venus and Jupiter are almost perfectly aligned with Starry Night. But if we look at where the mystery object is, we can see that it is not aligned with Mercury at all.
Right.
So this is further confirmation that this image is in fact not a genuine image of Venus and Jupiter and Mercury. Also with the fact that the Sun is in the wrong place.
Right.
Now another blink comparison. Here is the same image again, with Marshall pointing to this dark smudge, which I believe is just an image artifact. If I step to the next image from his video, again, this is the photo that was taken at 2000 hours. If I blink backwards and forwards, again, we can see that these two are pretty well aligned, but not this one being Mercury.
Right.
Now remember that this particular photo, this one that was taken at 2000 hours, is the junction of Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter.
Yeah.
So the spacing, the distances between these two should be correct.
Right.
If they are this photo, but we can see that Mercury is actually in the wrong place when we step backwards and forwards. Is that clear, Alfred?
I think that you're demonstrating it, in my judgment, beyond a reasonable doubt.
Okay, thank you.
That's the standard that you are demonstrating, in my judgment, beyond a reasonable doubt.
Right. Okay, now we'll carry on, and we're going to look at some screenshots from Starry Night Professional. Again, this is the same software that Marshall has used in his video. And I've put in a field of view marker here, which has a 22 degree radius. So it's actually 44 degrees across. And this is what the Sun looks like with the halo. I've actually turned off the daylight in this image so that we can see the other objects clearly. And I'm going to bring you into Starry Night so that we can check these, and then I can explain it better. Okay, so here we are looking at Starry Night Professional. Again, I've set it to the correct time and date, and also I have the altitude correct on this setting. Now, I'm going to turn off the halo to the sun, just to make it clearer. And I'm going to measure the distance between Venus and the sun. This is angular separation, it's not actually distances. This is the angle difference. And we can see on the screen that the angular separation between Venus and the sun is 15 degrees and 42 arc minutes. Now there are 60 arc minutes to 1 degree, so 42 arc minutes is almost. So we're talking 0.75 degrees from Venus.
Yeah.
If I zoom in and measure the angular separation between Venus and Jupiter, we can see that the angular separation is about 1.3 degrees, almost 1.3 degrees. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, again, this is very important because when those images, and I'll just bring them up again and step back. When we compare these images, what we're doing is we're comparing the distance between Jupiter and Venus. Here, Jupiter and Venus, we're comparing the distance in the image between these two objects and this one here and the sun, okay? This is a very important point. So we've got just approximately 1.3 degrees between Jupiter and Venus, right. But if we down to Venus and the sun, we've got a massive 15.75 degrees approximately. Right. If we this image again, we can see that the sun should be way down here.
Right. Right.
Now, notice that solar halo. Remember, that's 22 degrees from the sun. Okay? Right. So if I go back to Starry Night, you can see my field of view. I'll just center the sun. So that solar halo at 22 degrees from the sun would actually take it from the sun to outside of where we see this grouping of planets. Mm-hmm. But in fact, that's not what we see in this image.
Right. Right.
So I have to say that although the image of the conjunction is genuine, the one at 2000 hours, yeah. This image, which is the key image that Marshall Masters uses to identify what he calls planet X next to the sun. Yeah. This, in my opinion, is nothing more than internal lens reflections and solar flares caused in particular by the double layer window in the aircraft cabin. And I encourage people to check out those videos of the finger test, which show how to prove whether the objects are genuine or not.
We'll put some of those links to the finger test videos in the article that'll be accessible in the video description of this video.
Thank you. Now, I should add also that it is impossible to take an image of planets next to the sun in this fashion as we see in this image here when you are looking directly at the sun. It's just impossible. There's no way that you can take an image like that. The conjunction image that we saw at 2000 hours, let me see if I can find that quickly. Oh, it's much further on. Let me find it. This conjunction image was taken at 2000 hours, and it's important to note that by that time, and I'll change the time here in Starry Night, take this up to 2000 hours, daylight saving time. It's important to note that the sun is actually, where are we? Altitude of the sun is, it's about 7.5 degrees below the horizon. This is the horizon line here. So we would expect to see those planets, Venus and Jupiter, quite bright in the sky when the sun is below the horizon like that. But certainly not looking at images that are taken when the sun is in the center of the image as well. That's impossible. There's no way that you'd be able to take a photo like that. I challenge anyone to take a photo showing Mercury or Venus being the two inner planets, of course, next to the Sun. And in fact, Jupiter is an outer planet, so it would obviously have to be way behind the Sun. There's no way that it would show up in an image like this. Absolutely impossible. Now, we could look further at the gamma test, I guess, if you wish. In Marshall's video, he analyzes this image further. I should point out that this image has been rotated by Marshall 90 degrees. Previously, Jupiter and Venus were at the top of the image.
Right.
And this mystery object was out to the side. So in his video, he's done what he calls a gamma test, where he's actually stepped the gamma levels down in Photoshop or a similar program. And I'll just find those images. As you can see, I've taken a lot of images off this video.
Right.
Here we go. Here's the gamma with the default setting of 1, and he steps it down progressively.
Okay.
He's claiming that this identifies a hot object.
Right.
Now, gamma levels have got nothing at all to do with the heat of the object. They've got everything to do with the brightness of the object. It's all to do with contrast levels, brightness, and so on. It's got nothing at all to do with heat. In fact, if we take Marshall at his word on the gamma test, then we need to be looking at these other apparent objects around the Sun as well. You know, are these other planets around the Sun that we're looking at? Now, I've looked into this gamma test, and I've opened this up in GIMP, and here is one of the other images. This one was taken at 1754, and we can see what is clearly a little lens flare down here. In fact, I believe it's over the ocean, and we've got the leading edge of the aircraft wing down here. So let's see what happens when I step down the gamma. Now, hopefully you can see the little box that's just popped up there where it says gamma. Okay, so I'm going to step this down, and let's see what happens. This is just a sample image off the video. We'll see what sort of comparison we get as we get down lower. Now it's becoming quite dark, and what's happening to our lens flare down here? This is definitely a lens flare. What's happening to the leading edge of our wing? I'll keep taking it down. Now, 0.1 is as low as this will go, and I can still just make out that lens flare, and we can clearly see the leading edge of this wing, very bright.
Yeah.
Now, if this gamma test had anything at all to do with, well, I expect that the leading edge of this wing would be very cold at 37,000 feet and wouldn't show at all. But what this does for me is that this confirms that this gamma test is all to do with brightness and contrast and not heat. Heat does not come into this test at all.
Right. Now, in the previous image, you were showing the gamma test, and it still showed the mystery object, which you contend is actually lens flares, also due to possibly the double-paned window. Could you explain how lens flares would show up in the gamma test?
Well, I would say that this one is showing because being the one that is right next to the Sun, it's going to be the brightest one. The other ones are secondary lens reflections, and therefore they're not as bright. And this is quite common when you look at lens flares and internal lens reflections, is that the ones that are closest to the Sun, the primary reflection is going to be the brightest. And so if you're going to play with the gamma levels, then obviously the brightest one is going to remain, and the dimmer ones, the ones that are not so bright, are going to fade out as you lower the gamma level. As far as Marshall Masters' gamma test, I'm afraid I have to dismiss it as having no value whatsoever. And I think that when we put it together with our analysis of the other images, the blink tests that we've done, for example, this one here, where he identifies this dark image, and again, this is the Sun down here. This is a cropped image of that key image that was taken at 1629. This is the Sun down here, and there is no way that we would see Jupiter and Venus in an image right next to the Sun. Yes, you can take images of Venus in the daytime sky. I took some the other day, but it wasn't next to the Sun. Big difference. And obviously with our blink test that we did before, we saw that Mercury is actually over here, and not here. And we also saw that the sun is not here, but it's way down below. So I think that we've pretty much demonstrated that although the first conjunction image appears to be genuine, and I'm 99% sure it is genuine, it certainly lines up. It's a perfect match. I didn't have to rotate the image at all to make it match. So I'm satisfied that the conjunction image is genuine, but as far as the other images, and this one in particular, then I'm afraid, no, it just doesn't fit. Again, that 22 degrees, the measurements we took in Starry Night, the sun should be way down here. So I have to say that these are internal lens reflections.
Yeah. So just to sum up, at least from what I perceive, in my judgment, you have beyond a reasonable doubt demonstrated that what Marshall Masters claimed was the first actual photo of the Brown Dwarf system is, in fact, upon further examination, a lens flare.
Yes, indeed. And I think in summing this up, if I can just put these two images side by side, and I'll just move you over there, we can see the comparison in Starry Night. This is at 6:29, and again this is at 18:29, which is 6:20. And we can see with the side-by-side comparison about Venus and where the sun is, obviously they just don't match up, do they?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So, yes, I'm satisfied that these are internal lens reflections and nothing more.
Very good.
Are there any other questions that you would like to ask me while I've got Starry Night open?
Yes, I'd like to ask you this, and perhaps this doesn't relate to Starry Night, but I'll just ask the question, and if it doesn't relate to a Starry Night, we can take Starry Night down. There were two questions. Number one, you mentioned that you had done some other tests, but that you weren't going to go into them. Could you just briefly summarize what those tests were and what the results were, without going into them, just for the record?
I think I may have been referring to the gamma test, which we have.
Okay, so. Good. Yeah, too. And the second may relate to a question that we'll explore once we go off screen sharing and back into interactive video. And that is that you had raised the question that if a brown dwarf were as far into the inner solar system as this photograph would imply, it would be much more visible. Is that something that you would want to explore now, or when we're back into interactive?
Well, actually, I'm glad that you raised that because there's a myth that I would like to.
Sorry, you suddenly cut out right after you said myth.
There's a myth that I would like to deal with right now, and this is about brown dwarfs. Now, there's a common misconception that brown dwarfs are invisible and can only be seen or imaged in infrared. Now, that is true of all of the brown dwarfs that we know of, and I'll qualify that. The closest known brown dwarf, the closest brown dwarf that we know of is 6.5 light years away from us. Now, the closest other star to us, which is Alpha Centauri, Proxima Centauri, is 4.3 light years away. So just to give you some comparison. Now, at that distance, a brown dwarf, which is not a star, it does not give off its own light, it's a planet, it is so far away from our sun, of course, that it is too far away to reflect any visible light, and therefore it must be imaged in infrared. It's just too far away to be imaged in visible light. However, if a brown dwarf was within our solar system, even within the orbit of Neptune, then it would be visible in optical light because it would be close enough to our sun to reflect visible light. Now consider that Pluto is tiny little object. In fact, it's so small it's been demoted as a planet, and it was officially discovered in 1930, using optical telescopes and photography. Now they weren't using infrared photography to discover Pluto, but it was discovered with an optical telescope and optical visible light photography. And I mentioned the comparator test at the beginning of this video. And this is how the astronomer who was in charge of scanning the skies actually discovered Pluto, by flicking backwards and forwards between the two images taken over different nights and seeing the movement of Pluto. Once they had actually, they were able to check back and found, in fact, that they had imaged Pluto as early as 1915, but it had gone unnoticed. So getting back to the Brown Dwarf, obviously if we can image a tiny little object such as Pluto so far away in visible light, then we should have no problem at all seeing and imaging a brown dwarf which is supposedly larger than the planet Jupiter. Even if it was at 2 Jupiter distances away, as claimed by Marshall Masters, it would be clearly visible in visible light. You would not need to image it in infrared. And certainly, if there was a brown dwarf within our inner solar system, as some people claim, in other words, within the orbit of Mars, then you would be seeing it looming very bright in the sky, just as we can see Venus.
Right, and is that true even if this supposed brown dwarf would be at an angle to the ecliptic? That is the plane at which the planets rotate.
Yes, that's still a myth, and on my YouTube channel I've actually dealt with claims about the ecliptic. Nibiru can't be seen, or Planet X can't be seen because it's below. As if this ecliptic is some magical thing that you can't see anything if anything is below it. Well, I live in New Zealand, and I'm in the southern hemisphere, and I can see below the ecliptic all the way down to the south ecliptic pole. In other words, there's nothing below the ecliptic that I can't see. So if there was a brown dwarf anywhere below the ecliptic, it would be visible to me in New Zealand. And even for people in the northern hemisphere, they can also see well below the ecliptic plane. In fact, I seem to recall looking at Orion, the constellation of Orion, from the northern hemisphere. Many of the stars in Orion are actually well below the ecliptic plane, and of course you have no problem seeing those stars.
Right. Okay. Now, good. Now, I think that covers all of the questions. I have some more questions, but we can deal with them in an interactive phase. Why don't I just mention what those two questions are? And the two questions are as follows. The first is that, as you know, Marshall Masters, a number of months ago, indicates that he had photographed images of the brown dwarf from the Torrealba volcano. And then another part of his video purportedly takes the images from the Torrealba volcano and this image, which you've now shown is a lens flare, in order to purportedly plot a trajectory of the brown dwarf system to state that somewhere in the 2015-2016 time frame would be its perigee and its maximal impact time, what he calls the kill zone on Earth, which now we can see is an utter fabrication. But could you comment on, have you examined, and could you comment on the Torrealba photographs of the purported brown dwarf Planet X?
Okay, I have to say I haven't spent too much time looking at those images. I have seen some of them, and I've seen some very good videos which make it clear that the object that Marshall Masters identifies as Planet X in his videos is in fact, again, a lens flare. probably caused by the external dome on the camera. I've seen videos that clearly show the so-called object superimposed over cloud, and in some cases even superimposed over the edge of the crater of the volcano. So clearly it can't be a real object. This is the same sort of thing that we frequently see from Noumea Station, where the sphere that people claim is Nibiru is sometimes actually seen between the camera and the Noumea Station building itself, or even on the ground. So obviously it can't be real. But I can say to you that the team of astronomers that I'm working with that put out the video response to the 00 Skyview video will be looking at those images, and we will be presenting further information. In this video, I've only concentrated on the images taken by Jorge from the aircraft, but I'm quite satisfied that the image from the volcano webcam is again nothing but lens flare.
Okay, thank you. Now, this final question is sort of on a slightly different topic, but there have been so many speculations about it, and that's so-called Comet ISON. You know, it's so many rumors. We've seen from NASA that it's about to break up, and then there have been some very weird photographs of it. There have been some allegations that it's a spaceship. Do you have any data, or could you provide have you studied Comet ISON? And what is your view of what Comet ISON is, and what its probable behavior and impact around November of 2013 will be when it comes around?
Yes, Comet ISON is in fact a comet. It is just another comet. It's one of, as I recall, approximately 250 comets that are presently in our solar system. There are thousands of comets out there, and there are frequently more comets within our solar system than people ever hear about. But because Comet ISON is potentially going to put on a very good show, it's obviously getting a lot of publicity and attention. Now, I've looked at the images that have been posted recently of Comet ISON, where people claim that it is a spaceship, or that there's something strange about it, and that NASA are covering up information and all this sort of thing. What people are seeing in those images are three different images that were taken by the Hubble Space Telescope on different dates, and they have been stacked together, which is a technique that astronomers frequently use to provide images of objects in space. Now, I would recommend that viewers who want to check this out further go to Messier Hunter's YouTube channel.
Go to which, sorry?
Messier Hunter.
Okay.
Yes, and we can provide a link for that. He has now actually changed his YouTube channel name to Astronomy Live.
Okay.
Now, he is a very able astronomer, and he has done some very good videos just recently explaining what people are seeing. They are also uploaded on my YouTube channel, so people can see them on Dazza the cameraman's YouTube channel. And they explain very well. He takes the individual images and shows them individually, and then he stacks them together. But he also explains that what people are seeing is caused by parallax. And if people are familiar with parallax, they understand how that works. If you hold your finger out in front of your face and blink one eye left and right, you see that your finger appears to shift from one side to the other. And this is the effect that has caused the strange apparent objects, the three lines that we see in the image of Comet ISON. It is because the Hubble Space Telescope is in orbit around the Earth, and when those three images were taken, the satellite, the telescope, was in different locations in orbit around the Earth. So the angle of the image is different, and the parallax is different. You know, we remember that we're going around a sphere, so if you're standing on the North Pole, you're pointing straight up. If you're standing on the South Pole, you're pointing straight down, and if you're sort of halfway around, you're pointing out at an angle. Well, the same thing applies with the Space Telescope. If you're going to take photos when you're standing at a funny angle, well, your picture's going to be at a funny angle as well, and that's what we see in these images. I'm looking forward to Comet ISON. I have no concerns about it as a comet. At its closest point, it is going to be about 40 million miles or 64 million kilometers away from the Earth, which is a very long way. It poses no danger to us whatsoever. There are claims currently that we may be poisoned with cyanide gas as we pass through the tail. Well, we're not actually going to pass through the tail at all, but we may pass through what some people are calling its debris field, and I certainly hope that we do, because I'm looking forward to a meteor shower that might be quite spectacular. And this is in fact what causes meteor showers at set times every year. You know, people often look forward to the Leonids or the Geminids and types of meteor showers, and this is actually what causes them. It's passing through the debris field, if you want to call it that, of past comets, and the particles that we're talking about are very minute and they burn up very quickly. But in any case, if we did pass through the tail of the comet, which we're not going to, but let's say that we did, well, the same thing happened back in 1910 with Halley's Comet. On the 19th of May 1910, the Earth passed through the end of the tail of Halley's Comet. And in the lead up to that event, shall we say, the doomsayers of the day were making all sorts of dire predictions that life was going to be snuffed out on the Earth as we're all poisoned by the cyanide gas. And the scammers of the day did make some good money selling comet pills to ward off the effects of the cyanide gas. And of course, on the 19th of May 1910, the Earth did pass through the tail of Halley's Comet, and nothing happened. So we have no fears of Halley's Comet. I should say the allegation is often levelled against me that I'm a paid disinformation shill, that I work for the powers that be, that I work for NASA, that I work for the government and all of that. I can assure people that none of that is true. I'm an amateur astronomer with a lifelong interest in astronomy. I've had an interest in astronomy since I was a young teenager, more than 30 years ago, and I certainly wish I was getting paid, but I'm not.
Well, good. Let's then end this phase and come into the interactive phase. Go back to the interactive phase of the program.
Okay, now I see I've got a stop sharing button, so I think I can do that without ending the call this time.
Oh, good enough.
Okay, hopefully.
Oh, good. Welcome back. Yeah. Well, you know, this has been certainly a tour de force, and of course we welcome any response to this response that Marshall Masters or any of his team or anyone else would like to produce. Do you have a website or other place where people can go and look at your work?
Yes, I have my, aside from my YouTube channel, which is Dazza the Cameraman, I also have a Facebook discussion page which is called Voices of Reason to Explain X, Vortex. So I can send you a link for that as well. But I encourage people to come along there. We have a number of people of different skills. There are many astronomers on the page. There are also people with all sorts of other skills as well, in other sciences and other professionals as well. And we encourage people to come in there and post videos or links and ask questions and ask us to give our opinion on things. Now, we're pretty fair. We don't come down hard on people, and it's intended to be a safe place where people can ask what might seem to be silly questions by others. I'd also just like to say that I have actually sent Marshall Masters messages and just mentioning that I've been looking at his images, and I've asked him if he would like to take some time to talk to me about those images and things. But unfortunately, I've had no response. Now, I do know that he's seen those images, but unfortunately, he hasn't responded.
Yeah, that Marshall and I spent a time in which we were in dialogue, and we had sort of a weekly or bi-weekly radio program, and then either he hosted a show at which Dr. Courtney Brown and I both appeared, and we were looking at the prediction that there would be a global coastal event in June 2013. And this was right before 2012, this program. And I said, well, here's some of the evidence that shows why more probably than not, we will not have a global coastal event around June 2013. And both of the gentlemen became very agitated. And I said, well, why don't we have a radio program in February 2013? You know, we're close to the event and we can look at it. And I've never had a response from him since. So I don't think that he is into dialogue. And given your analysis today, I can see why he would not be into dialogue, because I think he is more into projecting his results in the face of the evidence. That would be my compassionate analysis of Marshall at this stage.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, I want to thank you and for this, and we'd like to be able to welcome you back when another challenge arises where we need someone to come in, like yourself, to come in and take a look at it, and we certainly value the service that you provide. As you say, vortex to reason.
Yes, voices of reason to explain X.
Yes.
I'd also like to mention, if I can, Bill Hudson from Cosmophobia. He is also on our team.
Yeah.
I'm certainly not leading the team by any means. It's a collaborative work. And Bill Hudson has the cosmophobia.org website.
Cosmophobia.
Cosmophobia.org website.
What exactly is cosmophobia?
It was originally set up as 2012 hoax.org.
Oh, I see.
And he was dealing with the fears that people had in the lead up to December 21,
Because my colleague Barbara Ann Cloud calls it catastrophobia.
Right, okay. So it was set up, and obviously after 2112 passed without event, it was time to rename the website. He set up a new one called cosmophobia.org, and he also has a Facebook page also called Cosmophobia, and I encourage people to check those two links out as well.
Yeah, and we certainly want to thank you for the voice of reason that you bring to the 2013 Dual Sun Mystery Group. And I know that what I've done there is I just pose a lot of questions. I just say, well, here's this. Can I get some answers on this? Because I'm not an astronomer. I'm just an observer. And we want to thank you very, very much for your continued participation in that group.
Thank you, Alfred. I appreciate that.
Good enough then.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. I'm Alfred Lambremont Webre, and we have the distinct pleasure today to be with, all the way from New Zealand, David Gregg, who is an amateur astronomer of some 30 years standing, who is a very active member in our Facebook group, which is called 2013 Dual Sun Mystery. And Dave has been following very assiduously, using the rigor of astronomical science, all of the various postings as to the evidence for and against the possible presence of, call it Planet X, call it Nibiru. There are many different other names. Some say it may be a dual sun that our sun has, a brown dwarf that some posit is now nearing. And the occasion of our being together is that researcher Marshall Masters has posted a video dated July 28, 2013, in which he takes reports images, recent images, and in fact he reports it as the first image of the Brown Dwarf system, taken from a plane by a member of his team. And so we can consider this, Dave is here to consider this a formal video response to Marshall Masters' video. And you can go to exopolitics.com and you will see a lengthy article on Marshall Masters' video of July 28, 2013. There'll be a lengthy article around this video, and those links will be posted in the video description to this video. David, with that lengthy introduction, first of all, I want to thank you for your countless hours of service and of monitoring this very important issue, and also of being willing to come on and to challenge a fairly hefty team behind Marshall Masters, who now claims that he has posted the first actual photograph of the Brown Dwarf system. So it's over to you now.
Okay, thank you, Alfred, and I do appreciate this opportunity to have a look at these images together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen with you, and we're going to take a look at some of the images that are posted in Marshall Masters' video, and we're going to take a closer look at those and analyze them using astronomy tools such as Starry Night Pro software. Now, first of all, I'm going to take a quick look at the section in the video. The particular part of the video that we're talking about is around about 40 minutes into his video, and it runs for about 10 minutes. Now, I'm not going to play all of that because there are sections that are extraneous, but we will look at some of that and look at those images from that video. So from here, I'm going to start my screen sharing so that I can show you that video and look at the images together. So just let me know if there are any problems. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, hopefully you should be seeing my screen now.
No. Oh, yes. There it is. Yes.
Okay, so we're looking at the Planet X System Observations and Orbital Analysis video by Marshall Masters, and we're at just on 39 minutes into the video. So I'll just start playing some of this, and hopefully it won't be too long.
With this in mind, let's turn our attention to the images of Jorge Arena, our very talented stringer at the Two Suns in the Sky research team on the Planet X Town Hall. And what I want to do with you, the viewer out there, is that we're going to do this camera sensor illumination analysis shoulder to shoulder. On May 27, 2013, Jorge was flying from Ontario to Lima, Peru on business. And fortunately for us, we have Jorge queued up and online. And so, Jorge, please introduce yourself to the audience and let them know a little bit about what brought you to Planet X.
Hello, Marshall. Yes, my name is George Urena. I am the president of Youthco Corporation, a company based in Ontario, Canada, manufacturing products from Peru. I get to travel a lot, and well, definitely I came to the topic of Planet X because of a vision that I had a few years back. Doing some research on the website, I found your website.
Well, Jorge, I'm really glad that you did. And now I'd like to get into some of the details on your business flight from Ontario to Lima, Peru.
Well, Marshall, due to my business, I get to travel quite a bit, almost everywhere, and particularly to Lima, Peru, because that's where we get all our products for distribution worldwide. And in this particular case, I decided to take a special flight, not the usual way I normally do it, which is a direct flight to Peru from Toronto. This time I've done it through El Salvador via TACA Airlines. The flight departed at around 10:30 on May 27th arriving at El Salvador around 3 o'clock. We were flying at about 37,000 feet altitude, and that's when I basically take all these pictures. I should mention...
Okay, I'll just stop the video there for a moment, Alfred.
Sure.
So we've heard Jorge's description. He'd mentioned that he flew from Toronto down to Lima, Peru, and he was taking these images at an altitude of about 37,000 feet, which works out to 11.2 kilometres altitude. We're going to come back to that later in the video. We saw a series of his images, and we're going to take a closer look at those. But first of all, let's just hear a little bit more of the video and Marshall Masters' commentary.
Yeah, sorry, could you state, you said 37,000 feet. How many kilometers? What was that? I missed that.
That works out to, I'll just share in here, you should be able to see calculation, 37,000 feet.
Yeah, 112,077.
That's 11,277 metres.
Oh,
yes, if I change that to kilometres, that's 11.
Okay, good. Sorry.
11.2 kilometres.
Okay, good. Okay. Thank you.
So I'll go back to the video. Jorge here is just describing his Nikon camera here. Yeah. And it's a Coolpix AW100, as you can see in the image there.
Sure.
Now he does mention that the time and date stamp on the camera was set to Toronto Eastern Standard Time, he says, but in fact, if we check the local time in Toronto, we see that the daylight saving time started on Sunday the 10th of March 2013 and will end on the 3rd of November 2013. So this means that the time that he took this was actually daylight saving time. Now that is quite important because obviously the clocks go forward 1 hour.
Yeah.
So we'll carry on and...
The pictures taken with my camera have a date stamp of Toronto, Eastern Standard Time.
Jorge, during your trip, I could see that you were doing a lot of experimenting with your Nikon camera. It was good to see that. A lot of people just won't take the time to test their equipment that way. And in the process, you found what I believe to be an incredibly compelling image. It was a 1-second exposure taken south of the equator at an altitude of 37,000 feet. And that's quite remarkable. Jorge, what is it that you learned with this particular camera experiment?
The reason why the plane inside, the lights of the plane were off. So that created a perfect scenario for the camera to pick up on the light outside. I have difficulty trying to set the camera, put the camera to the right settings in order to take the pictures. But honestly, because there were no lights inside, I was able to capture the light outside. And that's the reason why I was successful in getting this picture.
Well, Jorge, I have to say, hats off to you for a really, really stellar 1-second exposure image. With that in mind, now I'm going to explain to you what those 3 objects are that you captured. While we see 4 possible objects, the faint one in the lower right is not a real object. However, the other 3 are.